Good morning, everyone. We are the Group 10 to report and discuss the raster and vector graphics and their differences, presented to you by Chan, Ignacio, Ortega, and Sonza. And without further ado, let's first define what is raster graphics.
Raster graphics, also called bitmap graphics, a type of digital image that uses tiny rectangular pixels or picture element arranged in a grid formation to represent an image. Because the format can support a wide range of colors and depict subtle graduated tones, it is well suited for displaying continuous tone image such as photographs or shaded drawings along with other detailed images. This raster graphic is made of collection of tiny, uniformly sized pixels which are arranged in two-dimensional grid made up of columns and rows.
Each pixel contains one or more bits of information depending on the degree in detail in the image. For example, a black and white image contains only one bit per pixel. An image with shading and color commonly contains 24 bits of information per pixel.
One of the biggest disadvantages of a raster image is the inability to resize the image without getting jaggies or other types of distortion. For example, increasing the size of small raster image distorts the image because the image editor is resizing each pixel in the image.
For example, if we scale a raster image to enlarge it without changing resolution, it will lose quality and look blurry and pixelated. This is because we are stretching the pixels over a larger area, thus making them look less sharp. This is a common problem but can be remedied by using raster image editing programs such as Photoshop to change resolution and properly scale images. Raster images dimensions are measured in pixels because raster images cannot be enlarged without losing quality. Printers require that you provide them with the files at the correct size, the dimension you want to print in your image, and the pixel resolution for that particular project. The pixel resolution is the amount of pixels within each inch called ppi. Different types of printing have different resolutions and requirements. On average, a paper printing requires a minimum of 300 ppi. Short printers require a minimum of 240. Large format printers, banners, and billboards vary a lot because it also depends on the distance from which the sign is going to be viewed. Could be as low as 20 or more than 200.
How to determine what size your raster image must be for printing? If a printer requires a minimum of 300 ppi and you want to print an image in an area that is 5 inch wide, multiply 300 pixels by 5 inches equals to 1500. Your image must be at least 1500 pixels wide. Any program capable of opening one of the image is capable of creating a raster image. Most users use a paint program or image editor to create and edit raster image. One of the most popular programs is Adobe Photoshop. A paint program is software graphics program that allows the user to draw, color, or paint bitmap images on a computer. Though most are discontinued examples include Color Paint, Xpaint, Deluxe Paint, Mac Paint, and Microsoft Paint. Alternatively, referred to as graphic software or photo software, an image editor is a software program used to edit or otherwise manipulate an image, picture, or graphic. One of the most popular and powerful image editor is Adobe Photoshop. A free alternative to Photoshop is GIMP. A commonly used graphics program for working with a raster image is Adobe Photoshop. Adobe Photoshop is available in different versions, with the latest being Adobe Photoshop Creative Cloud. It is the premier graphics and photo editing program used professionals in every field of digital imaging. Raster types. JPG or Joint Photographic Experts Group. JPG or JPEG is the raster image that is often used for photographs on the web. JPGs can be optimized when saving them out of Photoshop to find the perfect balance of small file size and highly quality. On the web, you want your image files to be as small as they can be, so your site loads quickly, but large enough to still appear crisp and not pixelated. A JPG can have transparent background, so they're always in the shape of rectangle or square with a solid background. Next,
PNG or Portable Network Graphics. PNG is another raster image type. For the general marketer, the main difference to understand between PNG and JPG is that PNG can have a transparent background and is generally large and higher quality. Therefore, a PNG is ideal for saving logo files for websites because they can be placed over a colored background. Best used logos, icons, and other images where a transparent background is preferred. GIF or Graphics Interchange Format. A GIF is another raster image type. A GIF is formed up to 256 colors from the RGB color space. The fewer colors and shades contained in an image, the smaller the file size. Therefore, a GIF is ideal for images that use just a few solid colors and don't have gradient or natural shades. You wouldn't want to use GIF for a photograph. Best use simple web graphics such as web buttons, charts, and icons.
TIF, Tag Image File Format. A TIF or TFF is a large raster file. It has no loss in quality and therefore is primarily used for images used in printing on the web. Because of load time, you generally want to use smaller images such as JPG or PNG. TIF is best used images and photographs for high quality print. Next is PSD, Adobe Photoshop file. A PSD file is a layered image file used in Adobe Photoshop. PSD, which stands for Photoshop Document, is the default format that Photoshop uses for saving data. PSD is a proprietary file that allows the user to work with the image's individual layers even after the file has been saved. PSD is best used to re-editable multiple layers with images, photographs, and high-quality prints. Last is BMP, bitmap.
The BMP file format, also known as bitmap image file, device independent bitmap file format, and bitmap, is a raster graphics image file format used to store bitmap digital images independently of the display device, especially on Microsoft Windows and OS 2 operating systems. A BMP file format is capable of storing two-dimensional digital images, both monochrome and color, in various color depths and optionally with a data compression, alpha channels, and color profiles. The window meta file, or WMF, specification covers the BMP file format. Best use, high-quality scans, archival copies, system image files, Windows and Mac's platform. And finally, let us know what is the vector graphics.
Vector graphics are computer images created using a sequence of commands or mathematical statement that places lines and shapes in a two-dimensional or three-dimensional space. In vector graphics, a graphic artist's work or file is created and saved as a sequence of vector statements. A vector graphic file described as a series of points to be connected. These files are sometimes called geometric files. Images created with tools such as Adobe, Illustrator, and CorelDRAW are usually vector images. These graphics are points, lines, curves, and shapes that are based on mathematical formulas. When you scale a vector image file, it isn't low resolution and there's no loss of quality, so it can be sized to however large or small you need it to be. It is an excellent tool for putting company logos on business cards, creating poster designs, and photoshopping in Adobe Photoshop. Any art made with vector illustration software like Adobe Illustrator is considered vector art. Altering vector graphics is easy because the shapes within them can be ungrouped and edited individually. However, vector graphics are difficult to modify or even display when they are not open in programs that understand the rendering languages. Most paint applications, however, are capable of opening many different kinds of bitmap graphic formats because vector-based images are not made up of a specific number of dots. They can be scaled to a larger size and not lose any image quality. If you blow up a raster graphic, it will look like blocky or pixelated. When you blow up a vector graphic, the edges of each object within the graphic stay smooth and clean. This makes vector graphics ideal for logos, which can be small enough to appear on business cards but can also be scaled to fill a billboard. What are vector graphics used for? Scalability. Vector formats are good for projects that require scalable graphics, including scalable type or text. For example, company brand logos are displayed in different sizes. They show up in the corner of a mobile application or on a roadside billboard. A logo created with vector graphics can be scaled up or down without loss of quality or creating a large file. App and web development. Vector graphics are useful in application and web development because web apps and the graphics they contain must work with various screen sizes and device types. For instance, Amazon WorkLink is a mobile app that enables a fully interactive representation of a corporate data on an employee's mobile device. Next, animation. Animated images are also usually created as vector files, which provide for cleaner and smoother images. Next, computer aided design or CAD. CAD programs frequently use vector files for manufacturing, engineering, and design because of their scalability and ease when it comes to editing the mathematical formulas. Advantage and disadvantages of vector files. Scalability. As previously mentioned, this is the main advantage of vector graphics because vector graphics are derived from mathematical vector relationships or relationships between points that create lines and curves. They appear clean and exact at any size. Small file size. Vector graphics generally have small file size because they only store a small number of points and the mathematical relationships between them. Those relationships are expressed in code, which is less memory intensive compared to storing pixels. Easy to edit. Vector files are easy to edit because users can change vector relationship fast to swap out colors or change line shapes, for example. This is useful in an iterative process, like graphic design that requires a lot of editing. Easy to load. Because file sizes are smaller, it is easy to port and load vector files to different devices and programs. Easy to duplicate. It is also easy to create clones of a vector image and copy certain features of one graphic to another. Precision. The ability to scale vector graphics up or down means they have a precise look and feel. The disadvantage is It has less detail. Vector files are limited in dealing with complex images. For instance, photographs require color, shading, and blending that vector files cannot provide, as well as raster files. Skill and time requirements. Vector files can require more skill and time to create. Limited browser support. There is less support for vector graphics on web browsers than for raster graphics. Inconsistency. Vector images can vary from one application to another depending on how compatible the rendering and creating applications are, among other factors. Types of vector files. .ai means Adobe Illustrator file. .cdr means Core Hydro Image file. .dxf or Drawing Exchange Format file. .eps Encapsulated PostScript file. .svg Scalable Vector Graphics file. And WMF means Windows Meta file. Different file types are used for different tasks. For example, AI files are commonly used in print media and digital graphics. EPS files can be both raster and vector files. They typically contain a small design element that can be embedded in a larger design. This makes them suitable for sending logos, which are often incorporated into larger designs.
After we know the definition, characteristics, etc. of raster and vector, this time we will look closely on how they differ from each other. Good day everyone, I am Jeremy Ayachan and I will be discussing the difference between raster and vector. Number 1. Pixels versus matte. Raster is comprised of colored pixels arranged to form an image. Quality depends on how high the pixels used in a photo, and because of this, the lower the resolution or pixels per inch that an image has, the smaller the image must be to maintain the quality. So you cannot scale the photo without sacrificing the quality. Meanwhile, the vector graphics are composed of paths, each with a mathematical formula that tells the path how it is shaped. Because the mathematical equations that form the foundations for vectors recalculate when they're resized, you can infinitely scale a vector graphic and maintain crisp, sharp edges. Number 2. Resolution and scalability. One of the easiest comparisons that we can do in order to see the difference between raster and vector is to scale them both. Let's take a look at the photo on the presentation. When you zoom in a raster image, you can see that the image becomes pixelated or blurred. So the nearer that you get or zoom the photo, you will also be able to see the individual pixels in this file. On the other hand, vector resolution is not a concern because no matter how you scale or resize the photo, it will retain its quality. As mentioned earlier, the resolution of a raster image is defined by pixel per inch or PPI, or dots per inch or DPI, and is formed by a combination of millions of pixels. So it has a fixed size once created. While in a vector image, every time you resize a vector image, its lines, curves, and nodes are recalculated. So the resulting image remains sharp and clear. Next, number 3, their usage. Both of them can be used when creating an image. You can also create whatever image that you want with these formats. But when you have a specific goal or purpose on where you will use them, then it is important to know where and when to use raster and vector formats. So raster is the best to choose when you want to create true-to-life graphics because they are visually perfect for color blends, shades, gradients, and shadows. Raster images are capable of displaying myriad of colors in a single image and more effective to use for color editing than the vector image because they can display finer nuances in light and shading at the right resolution. With that, raster images are often likened in painting and best to use for actual photos. Meanwhile, vector is mostly likened to drawing and it is the best choice when making logos, illustrations, engravings, product artwork, signage, and embroidery because Vector images can provide scalable shapes and solid colors. So if the vector strength is how scalable and resizable it is, the raster's strong point is that it is flexible with colors. Actually, it is still possible to make a vector resemble a photograph, but the minute nuances of blended colors, shading, shadows, and gradient make it impossible to get a true-to-life representation of a photograph with vectors. Even if it were possible, the process would be really difficult and time-consuming as every color change will require a new shape to be created. But both vector and raster can be combined in a single photo, which are often seen on billboards, posters, and others. One of the examples where raster and vector were used in a single photo is this example photo, specifically a billboard at this presentation. As you can see, both were used for the photo. The graphic used for the model was raster because with raster, an editor can edit the photograph's color, brightness, etc. according to his or her needs or style, and because it is easier to do it with raster. Meanwhile, the editor used the logo gap with vector because as mentioned earlier, vector is the best choice for logos as it can provide scalable shapes and solid colors. Next, number 4, they are also different from their file type, file size, and the editing programs used to create them. The file type used for raster are JPG, GIF, PNG, TIF, BMP, and PSD, while the file type used for vector are JPAI, CDR, and SVG, but both of them can be rendered in or exported to EPS and PDF. Next is their file size. Raster images have large file size. So why is that? Because images must contain all the information necessary to render the image. Compression can help minimize those file sizes, but compared to vector, raster takes up a lot of space. Vector images have small file sizes because they rely on calculations to be performed by the programs that load them. The only information they need to contain are their mathematical formulas. Then when it comes to the editing programs used for the both of them, Photoshop, which has limited vector capabilities, and GIMP are used for raster. On the other hand, Adobe Illustrator, CorelDRAW, and Inkscape are the programs used for vector images. Number 5. Printing. Historically, the web displays 72 dpi or 72 dots or pixels per inch, a relatively low pixel density. However, most modern displays are now much higher. That said, many images on the web are still in the 72 to 100 dpi range, while monitors can display higher resolution. The web also needs to optimize for speed so image around 100 dpi hit the sweet spot for looking great on a screen, but also loading quickly. With that, raster images with a low DPI in the 72 to 100 look nice and crisp on the web. But this same low DPI image may not be suitable for printing on a brochure or packaging. To correctly print an image, it should be at least 300 DPI, a much higher pixel density than the web displays. So resizing a low DPI image pulled from the web to fit the dimensions of your print project won't work, because the same finite number of pixels only get bigger and begin to distort. For example, let's say you want to print your logo at 2 by 3 inches on the brochure. If you have a 72 dpi JPG of your logo and it's 2 inches by 3 inches, it will need to be stretched to more than 3 times the size to get it to 300 dpi. That 72 dpi logo may look great on your computer monitor, but when it prints at 300 dpi, it will look pixelated. So you should use a vector version of your logo or create a raster with the exact dimensions desired and at 300 dpi. As you can see on the photo given at the presentation, the dpi of the output, which is produced by the printer, is much clearer compared to the input that can be seen on our monitors. Because compared to monitors, printers need a much higher quality as the printing process needs a greater detail. Thus, it is more effective to use vectors when printing images, because they are resolution independent, which can be printed clearly at any size.
Summary of the difference between raster and vector. Hello again, I am Angelica Ignacio, and I will wrap up the whole discussion with the differences of the two graphics to help you understand their similarities even more. Raster and vector are very different from each other. Because raster is clearly pixel-based, while vector is dictated by mathematical formulas. Raster becomes blurry or pixelated when scaling, while the quality of the vector is retained when scaling or resizing. Raster is capable of rich, complex, and color blends, while vector is difficult to blend colors without rasterizing. Raster has large file sizes but can be compressed, while vector comes with small file sizes. Raster is capable for detailed editing and best used for photographs. Vector has less detailer but offers precise paths, best used for logos, illustrations, signages, and many more. In raster, source files is to be sent to the printer, while vector has high-resolution files that can be printed at 300 dpi as it can be printed at any resolution or size. Raster is for painting, while vector is for drawing. Raster is depending on the complexity of the image. Conversion to vector may be time-consuming, while vector can be easily converted to raster. It is more difficult to print raster images using a limited amount of spot colors, but the number of colors can be easily increased or reduced to adjust printing budget in vector. Some processes cannot use raster formats, but vector art can be used for many processes and easily rasterized to be used for all processes. The raster file types are JPG, GIF, PNG, TIF, BMP, and PSD, while vector is JP, AI, CDR, and SVG. Software used in raster is Photoshop and GIMP, while the vector is Illustrator, CorelDRAW, and Inkscape. Again, we are the group 10, thanking you all for listening.